I'm Frank Garza, and welcome to Here and Abroad, a podcast that follows the U.S. men's national team and their player pool across Europe, MLS, or wherever else they play their club football. On today's show, we're diving into four key topics surrounding the USMNT player pool. We'll get into Dest and Pepi's fitness at PSV, take a look at Pulisic's preseason with Milan, cover the latest summer transfer moves, and discuss one MLS player who's starting to raise some concerns, or a little bit of concern. To help me today, I've invited Seth Vertelny to join the show. Seth is the managing editor at Pro Soccer Wire. So, Seth, let's start with Serginho Dest and Ricardo Pepi at PSV. Both of them are still in the process of getting all the way back, to their best form after having some serious injuries. From what you've seen out of them the preseason so far, how they're progressing, which one of the two would you say is most likely to get a start for the U.S. men's national team in one of these upcoming September friendlies?
Yeah, it's pretty close between the two of them in terms of who's more likely to start. I mean, at the striker position with the U.S., there's still a lot of uncertainty right now. Pepe's coming back from an injury. He's been playing a little bit at PSV in preseason, but they're bringing him along slowly. But that position right now has a lot of question marks when it comes to the U.S. men's national team. Buller and Balogun also coming back from injury, probably his biggest competitor for that number one spot. Patrick Agyemang, he is injured. He is either going to have hernia surgery soon or has already had it, but he looks like he's going to miss the beginning of the season in England and therefore might not be ready for the U.S. men's national team in September. So those look like the top three options right now. Josh Sargent is in the mix, but he was left off the roster this summer, so it's hard to say where he fits in there. In the meantime, Serginho Dest, I would imagine if he's healthy, he probably slots right back into that right back spot, another position where it's not totally clear what Mauricio Pochettino is thinking beyond Dest. This summer was Alex Freeman's summer at the Gold Cup. He had never played any international soccer before. He's barely played club soccer. He's only halfway through his first club season. But he kind of took over that right back spot and had an up and down tournament, definitely showed some flashes, showed why he's so highly rated, but also had some moments of inexperience. And you wonder where Joe Scally fits in there. He was also, like Sargent, left off of the roster this summer, even though he was healthy. I think the knock on Scally is just his attacking ability isn't there as much as some of his competitors at the right back position. And so if Scally's in the game, you kind of have to change the way that you game plan. And when it comes to the way Pochettino looks at how he sets his team up. And so I think Dest is probably a little more likely to start because I think he's a little bit ahead of Pepi in terms of their fitness. But, if they both start the season well with PSV, I wouldn't be surprised if both of them are starting.
Yeah, I think I see it very similar to you. Very close. I give Dest the edge just because he is quite a bit ahead of Pepi in terms of fitness. I mean, he was able to come back last season and play at the end. I watched PSV's friendly this weekend or over the weekend against Athletic Club. Dest went the full 90 minutes. I thought he looked pretty good. I'm not saying he was all the way back to the Dest of old, but I mean, the fact that they're giving him 90 minutes in a preseason game, I think stands really well to, what they think about his fitness level. Pepi didn't dress for that PSV, and one of the main journalists over in Eindhoven, Rick Elfrink, I saw he tweeted that it was because Pepi wasn't fit, or at least that's how the translator translated his Dutch from Rick's post. So I don't know if that just means I don't know what that means because he has been playing some. I don't know if that meant injury or just conditioning, but we'll have to see what Pepi does in their next friendly, which I believe is Wednesday of this week against FC Eindhoven. So yeah, I do give Dest the nod, but there's I could see it going the other way. You know, like you said, there's not an obvious striker. Like who's going to start up top isn't obvious. I mean, everybody you
Yeah,
named has some kind of uncertainty heading into
right.
this September friendly. And so if Pepi comes back in the team and he's starting, I mean, they're going to be playing their first competitive match. Where is it here? Against Go Ahead Eagles this Sunday in the Johan Cruyff Shield. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's the winner of the regular season from last year against the Dutch Cup winner. And so they have their first competitive match this upcoming weekend. Then they'll have 4 regular season matches before the September friendly. And so, if Pepi gets going, when he has 2-3 matches where he's starting for PSV and looking good, I could see him getting a start in September because he's already come into a camp with Pochettino before he got injured. He scored some goals, so he's built some good equity. But
Yeah, and
yeah,
Pepe has the 9 shirt at PSV this year.
true.
Luke De Jong appears to be on his way out of the club. He's a free agent, hasn't signed with them. And so, the thing I think we've all been wondering with Pepe in the last 2 years at PSV is what would happen if this guy actually had regular minutes, because he's been scoring goals at an insane rate. And if you prorate it out over the course of a season where he's starting every game, he'd be scoring like 100 goals. And so you wonder how much he can keep up that scoring rate. And I think as long as he's healthy, he's actually going to get the chance to play game in, game out, 90 minutes. And, if he continues to show the kind of form that he has, like, he could put up some crazy video game type numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all set up for him this season if he can get back to health, right? He's been patient at PSV. Now he seems to be the etched-in starter as long as he can get back up and running, pretty quickly. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, we'll just have to see how they use him in the friendly on Wednesday, if he plays in the cup over the weekend, and then how he ramps up. But
yeah, and they did sign Alassane Plea, who is a pretty solid veteran.
he scored a goal.
He's definitely good enough to start for PSV. He's coming off a few seasons at Borussia Mönchengladbach, and he was scoring a lot of goals there. And so some serious competition for Pepi, even though it does appear that Pepi is going to start if he's healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, and, and as far as what Pochettino does at right back, I mean, this is a whole other discussion. How Poch, reintegrates a lot of who we call, regulars back in the lineup after the Gold Cup is a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
I still maintain that I think he's gonna want to reward a lot of these Gold Cup guys for their performance, and he's gonna want to make some of these other regulars, earn their way back into the team. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if, Freeman got a start in the first September friendly, and then maybe Dest got a start in the second one. But I would think no matter what, as long as Dest is healthy and playing, he's going to get at least one of those starts. But we'll be interested to see what Poch does there. Let's go to another preseason camp, and that's over at AC Milan. And I want to talk about Pulisic. They've played 2 friendlies so far against Arsenal and Liverpool. Pulisic had an assist against Liverpool. He started both matches. He's playing under a new coach, Max Allegri. What have you seen from him so far? What are your thoughts on his preseason so far and his outlook for this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think the signs for AC Milan overall have been pretty good. I mean, it's preseason, so there are a lot of caveats there, but they put up a pretty good performance against Arsenal. They lost 1-0, and then they went out and beat Liverpool 4-2, which is obviously a great result, even if it is preseason. Allegri seems like he is going to instill his own style, which has been successful in Serie A. I know that he had his share of critics during the end of his period at Juventus for playing sort of a reductive kind of defensive style, but um, I think Allegri's a proven winner also in Italy, and so um, there has been some reporting that under Allegri there were a few untouchable players from his lineup, and Pulisic was one of them. Regardless of whether there's reporting that spells that out or not, I mean, it seems kind of obvious that he would be. He's been their most effective attacking player since he joined 2 years ago. And so you would think his spot in the lineup is entrenched. And with his rest period this summer, he should be fresh and healthy and ready to go. And you would hope, given all the controversy that caused with the U.S. men's national team and the implications of that moving forward, that at least it would have given him the break that he wanted. And so he should be able to come into preseason and hit the ground running and be ready to, play 90 minutes game in, game out, like he has for so many games for them over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think that the thing that stood out to me the most is just how every new coach at Milan that he's played for, how much they value Christian Pulisic. You know what I mean? Kind of like you said, he was one of the kind of locked in starter untouchables, I think is what you said. And I read a similar article that he was one of like 4 untouchables in the lineup for Allegri. And but every coach since he's come in, there's been no doubt that he's one of the most important members, of the team, and that he's going to play week in and week out. I think back to the days when he played with Chelsea, and every time Chelsea played, I would pull up their lineup card, about an hour before the game to kind of see if he was like in or out, and you never do that for a Milan game. You just kind of assume he's gonna be there, and so the fact that he's so solidly in the starting 11 without even question, I think that's awesome. And I've wondered with Allegri ball, is it going to be boring, too defensive minded? Is he going to get as many opportunities? Then they go out and score, the 4 goals against Liverpool. So that's what I'm kind of watching is, how many goals are they scoring once we get into the season? Allegri still seems to be kind of tinkering with the formations a little bit. So where is he ultimately going to play? Pulisic most of the time, week in and week out. And then, if he isn't productive, I think he's going to start getting a lot of heat, especially from the, American like media and pundits, because, we're all expecting him to kind of come out and catch fire at the start of this because he took that break. And so hopefully he can get off to a good start. I think it's still too early to tell, what it's going to look like under Allegri, but, I like that Allegri values him so much and just kind of views him as one of these untouchable players.
Yeah, and in true, Italian fashion, Pulisic is now under his 4th coach at AC Milan, as he's about to start his 3rd season, and so that's kind of par for the course. I mean, it has been for Pulisic his entire career. He played under a lot of different coaches at Chelsea, but yeah, like you said, every single coach that's come in has realized that he has to be in their lineup every single week, basically, to continue to produce at their maximum attacking efficiency. And so, yeah, I think they're probably, like you said, there's probably going to be more pressure on him in the early season from this side of the pond. Like the American critics are going to be watching closely, because if he starts out slow, they might be like, well, what was that rest for? Like, why did you even need to do that? Like, maybe you should have just kept playing, or at least played a little bit in the summer and stayed fresh. But yeah, I think the main question with Pulisic, at least in terms of the national team, is whether he gets called in September. I'm not sure if he will be, to be honest. I think Pochettino might want to send some kind of a message. Obviously, long-term, Pulisic has to be part of his project, but that'll be interesting to see what happens in September.
What do you give it 50-50? If you had to guess right now, 50-50, which way do you think it will go? He'll get called in or not?
I think, like you said, I think it's kind of 50-50. If I had to guess, I would say no. I
No?
think he
Wow.
might. I think he might get left off the roster. He might not be the only one. You know, I think Pochettino was clearly bothered not just by Pulisic's decision to skip the Gold Cup, but also the interview that he gave to CBS, where he said that he wanted to play the two friendlies at least, and Pochettino said no, and that Pulisic quote didn't understand that. Clearly, that was something that Pochettino felt undermined his authority as the coach. He had that press conference where he said, "I'm not a mannequin." And so I think those two things combined, I think that Pochettino might need to send a message, knowing, of course, like I said, like Pulisic is going to be part of this group. He's going to be starting for this team. There is no alternative to him with the U.S. men's national team. But I think in terms of reassessing his, reasserting his authority, Pochettino might leave him out in the fall.
Yeah. Yeah, there's, is he going to try and send a message? Yes or no? And then how strong of a message, is he going to send? Because there's various ways to do it. I mean, I would still think that he brings him in, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if he sat on the bench, for at least the first friendly. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I wouldn't be shocked if it went the way you're saying either. He doesn't bring him in. I mean, I'm actually to the point where very little will shock me that Pochettino does at this point, because he's surprised me so much with other things he's done that I think, absolutely anything is on the table.
For
Well, we'll
sure.
see. We'll see how the rest of the preseason goes for Milan. They're going to play Perth Glory, who's an Australian team, on Thursday, and then they play Leeds United and Chelsea later in August to round out their preseason. So we're still in the middle of this summer transfer window, and a number of U.S. internationals have already gotten pretty good moves. We're still seeing every day different rumors out there about some of the other ones. But as this summer progresses, as this transfer window kind of progresses, is there any player that you're starting to get worried about or concerned about because you just don't like the direction it's going for him so far?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. I guess the first on that list has to be Matt Turner, because of all of the drama that's happening right now regarding his move from Nottingham Forest to Lyon. There was some reporting last week that Lyon was trying to cancel that deal, because they were relegated from Ligue 1 to the second division. Then they were reinstated after appeal, but as part of that reinstatement, they had to sort of rein in their spending on wages and transfer fees. And the club felt that Turner wasn't worth what they had originally committed to him. But I don't know if they're going to be able to actually cancel that deal. You would have to think that for Turner's sake, if the transfer goes through, that would not be ideal. Given this is a club that has shown they don't want him, even though they already apparently agreed to some kind of a deal with Nottingham Forest. So it's a weird situation for a player that obviously has to be starting somewhere this coming season if he wants a chance to regain his position with the U.S. men's national team. So hopefully for Turner's sake, he can sort it out. And, if he does end up going to Lyon, maybe he actually does have a chance to win the starting job. They appear to be selling their starter from last year to Leeds. And so that would in theory open up a role for Turner, but also doesn't seem like the club necessarily rates him. So that's a weird one. A couple other guys who seem to be in limbo right now, Tim Weah and Gio Reyna. Reyna, that one appears to be maybe more of a straightforward situation than Weah, just because Borussia Dortmund and Parma, I believe the figures quoted was Dortmund wanted 10 million euros and Parma was only willing to pay 7 million. So hopefully that's that's a gap that can be bridged because going to Italy, even at a team that was battling relegation last year, would be I think a really good move for Reyna, given the lack of playing time that he's had for so long. Would seem to be the ability to get some minutes or the opportunity to get some minutes in a high level league. Of course, it's still going to be up to Reyna whether that actually happens. Where, yeah, there's some real drama again, kind of like Turner, where Juventus appears to be not willing to let him go to Marseille, even though he wants to. Um, if you believe what his agent said, it's a retaliation for Weah not going to Nottingham Forest when Juventus wanted him to, and he didn't. So it's a little bit of a mess there. But obviously, the key for any player is to be in a situation where the club wants you and you're getting minutes. And so Turner, Weah, Reyna, three guys that could or should play a big role with the men's national team going forward. They need to get those situations figured out one way or another.
Yeah. The Turner one is the most concerning to me. I mean, first I was a little bit surprised because I never, even though it was announced a long time ago that, Lyon had kind of come to an agreement to get him, I thought it was a verbal agreement. I hadn't seen news that they had officially like signed something. I never saw the club like kind of announce them, so I didn't realize it was official. And then when they said they were trying to take legal action to like cancel the contract, that confused me a little bit. But whatever the deal is,
you don't see that
how,
every day.
You don't see that every day.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they don't, I mean, if a club is trying to get rid of you before you've even really arrived, I mean, that's not a good sign. And so if I was him, I'd be trying to help that contract, whatever it is, get canceled so that he can find a club that wants him. I mean, it's just, it doesn't seem like, the whole thing seems like a mess. I mean, you look at just the organization and what they're going through about getting relegated and then being able to appeal it. It's just the whole situation over there seems like a mess. Maybe you just want to get as far away from it, as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and part of it also had to do apparently with John Textor, who was the owner of Lyon, and apparently he had some sort of a role in bringing Turner in. Textor is American, and then after the relegation, Textor kind of stepped aside. And so maybe Textor was part of the reason that Turner was going there, and once he was out of the picture, the club didn't want him as much. And so, yeah, I don't know. There are a lot of moving pieces. I'm one party that we haven't heard from yet is Nottingham Forest, and I'm really curious to know what they think about this, because it seems like there was something signed, and if it would appear that if that were the case, then Forest would have every right to just say, nope, it's over. Like, we sold
your problem
you
now.
And yeah, not our problem. Deal's done.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that one. The Gio Reyna Parma deal, I really do hope that works out because I think that's a perfect move for him, a perfect club for him. Surely they'll find a way to bridge that gap because I just don't think Dortmund wants anything to do with them anymore. They're just trying to get as much money as they can. And surely at the end of the day, if they have this club that wants them, they'll be able to find some deal there. The Juventus, Tim Weah, I just don't look too much into the Juve transfer gossip anymore because every summer they're trying to get rid of McKennie and then he signs and plays a big role in their team. And so I don't know. They just seem to have a certain vibe around how they want transfers to go. And it can seem like there's no chance of it working out, and then magically it works out, and the player does great. So we'll see if that's the case for both McKennie and Weah, because we're here, and I was just reading today about some transfer rumors for Weston McKennie as well.
Yeah, and McKennie, as has been the case for the last 2 summers, is being linked with the move away. He's got to sort out his contract situation because it expires at the end of this coming season. So, it feels like one way or another soon they'll figure it out, whether he leaves or signs an extension. I think what Juventus wants to avoid is him going into the last year of his contract and then potentially leaving on a free next summer. With Weah, it seems like that relationship between player and club is really damaged. And, for his sake, you would hope that he can find a way out, because it would seem hard for him to continue. And, if there's a club like Marseille that wants to sign him and he wants to go to, that would seem like the best move for everybody involved.
Right. Let's go over to MLS. Last thing I want to talk about here is I want to get your thoughts on Diego Luna. So here's a guy that seemed to be, the star of the Gold Cup, along with maybe Malik Tillman. But since going back to RSL after the Gold Cup, he started 4 matches, no goals, no assists, so he hasn't been very productive. I'm starting to get a little worried about him. What's your thoughts? Do you have any concerns about his performance at RSL since he's gone back there?
Yeah, I don't think it's too long of a slump now where I would be super concerned. I think he has shown the ability to be a high level player in MLS for the last, year and a half, 2 years. And you would think that a player of his caliber who's shown what he has shown in MLS will eventually figure out a way to get back among the goals and the assists. I think, with Luna, the bigger question is what happens with his club future over the next year. There are naturally a lot of clubs that are following him in Europe right now. And so it would be, the time for him to potentially seek out another club, on the back of this summer where he did well with the U.S. national team. But it would also be a big risk going into a World Cup year, going to a new team in a new country in a higher level league than MLS. He's managed to sort of establish himself at least as part of the picture under Pochettino as an MLS player. And you could see an argument that it would make more sense for him to wait, say in MLS, maintain his position in the player pool, and then maybe try to move next year after the World Cup. Because, if he goes to Europe and all of a sudden he finds himself not playing regularly, he could pretty easily drop out of the picture under Pochettino. But also, he could bet on himself and be like, I've been on this rise. I have this talent and ability to play at a high level. And, maybe it's time to show what I can do in a higher level league. And if he does that, maybe he is in the conversation, not just as somebody in the mix for a World Cup roster position, but maybe fighting for, if not a starting role, at least a regular role. Because right now I still think with the full A team together, he's definitely not a starter. And, there's a question over, how many minutes he would really see like at a World Cup.
Yeah, my feeling on it is if the perfect transfer kind of arrives and presents itself, you're excited about the club, you feel pretty good. They have a plan to use you and give you some serious minutes. Like, go for it. But if it doesn't seem just like the perfect move, like, just wait it out at RSL. I don't think you have that much to gain, but there's a lot to lose, if you make the wrong move. I mean, he's going to get his transfer over to Europe. If he doesn't go this summer, I would say next summer. You can never say it's certain, but you certainly look at his trajectory. You would think he can. But I guess I brought him up because I wanted him to come out of this Gold Cup with just that momentum, and like bring that back to MLS and just basically keep that level and just keep like ramping up. You know what I'm saying? And I just wonder if it was just if the Gold Cup was just such a high, because he's playing with the national team. Everybody's talking about him. He's getting all these interviews. He's an integral member of the team. If there's just a little bit of a low, or I don't know if it's not as exciting going back to RSL, or I don't know if the attention got to his head at all. He seems pretty grounded, but What I wanted to see from a lot of these guys who had a good Gold Cup that are going back to MLS is just ride that wave, and like keep going. I think somebody like a Sebastian Berhalter has done that. He's gone back to Vancouver and already had some decent production and looks like he's playing pretty well. And I just like to see Diego Luna do that. 4 games, a dry spell over 4 matches isn't the end of the world. But I'm hoping he can get this going like pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would add Alex Freeman too to the list of guys that have come back to MLS and continued to do well.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Seth, that's it for today. Thanks again so much for coming on the show. I will make sure and put links in the show notes to your X account, which is at @sfortellme, and also to your work at Pro Soccer Wire. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to everyone for listening to Here and Abroad. If you enjoyed the episode, please do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, or that follow button if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or somewhere else. Thank you so much. I'm Frank Garza. You can follow me on X at FrankGarza007, and I'll be back next week with a new episode.